Well folks, it's that time of year again where lots of bikers are putting their bikes away for winter, and I used to be one of them, but I'm not anymore, and I'm going to tell you why. So last year I decided to invest in some winter gear. I'd always been one of those bikers to tuck the bike away, you know, around about October time, get the bike back out in, you know, spring, and I was happy with that. But then I decided, no, I'm effectively missing out on 4 months, 5 months, 6 months of biking every year. So I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I invested in some winter gear, and I learned very quickly that the key to riding in the winter is about two things. All of the gear that you buy is, well, assuming that it's not electronically controlled, all the gear that you buy is focused on two things. Number one, keeping the heat that your body is naturally generating. You know, all your gear is designed to trap that heat in and keep you warm. And number two, a lot of the gear is waterproof, and when it's waterproof, it's windproof, because if you're not windproof, the wind's going to get in and make you cold. If you're not waterproof, the water's going to get in and make you wet, and once you're wet, then you get cold. So what did I buy? Well, a typical winter setup for me starts with a good base layer. So the first thing that I'll put on is some sort of neck warmer. At the moment I'm using an Oxford neck warmer, and it works pretty well. It does only cover my neck, you know, it's not one of those that goes up and over your head, you know, it's not a balaclava style warmer. I've thought about getting one, you know, a balaclava style, but I do wear glasses as well, so I've just got to be mindful of that fact. When I was designing a winter setup, when I was deciding what to buy, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to address the issue of where different pieces of your gear meet. So for example, where your jacket and helmet meet, there's a gap, you know, and that's your neck. Hence the neck warmer. Then you've got the gap where your trousers and your boots meet. So I decided to go with some rather long socks. Again, these are Oxford, and they come up to, well, I have to fold them down, they're that long, but basically they come up to almost my knee, and on top of those I then wear some proper thick thermal socks, you know, typically the type of thing that you see for sale in the winter. And having those long socks helps with that gap between the boot and the trousers, and having the thermals obviously helps with keeping me warm. And the next gap is the gap between your jacket sleeves and your gloves, and for me that's a hot spot for, I mean, hot spot, probably not the right word, but that is a typical place for wind to get into your jacket and make you cold. So what I've done there then, and I've not seen anyone else do this actually, I mean, it could be a thing, I don't know, but I decided that I needed something essentially for my wrists to plug that gap between my bike's jacket and my gloves. And so I bought these sport sleeves, and the way you're meant to wear them is that they're meant to go from your wrist up past your elbow, you know, and further up your arm, but that's not how I wear them. I deliberately bunch them down, it's sort of like all the way down to my wrist, so you got them all bunched together on your wrist, and that really helps me with, you know, with that gap between jacket sleeves and gloves. And the next thing that I put on is my Oxford onesie, and people do laugh about the fact that I wear a onesie. On top of the base layer then, I have bought a 2-piece RST Textile, which is windproof and waterproof, and they zip together so that there's no gap between jacket and trousers, and also the jacket itself, where you zip it up, you've got your primary zip, then you have this waterproof layer that goes on top of your primary zip, and then you have your secondary zip. So essentially you've got 2 zips there, and yeah, nothing gets through there. I've never had water getting through there. On top of that then, I then go with my RST boots. These are also waterproof. I accidentally, when filming the once, stepped in a pothole, and this pothole was bloody huge. It must have been 6-8 inches deep. The water came up completely all the way up to my ankle, and when I got home I was still bone dry. So really impressed with these boots. The trousers, you know, my Textiles, they go over the top of the boots. I've never had any water getting in there, and I don't get any wind getting in there either. Now these Textiles, they do have thermal linings for when it gets really cold. I'm not currently using them. I'm not wearing them today. Everything I'm telling you about, I'm actually wearing today, with the exception of these thermal liners. But anyway, that was my boots sorted. After my boots, only really leaves gloves and helmet. And my gloves, I'd gotten so used to wearing my Alpinestars summer gloves because they fit me so perfectly. The problem with them is they're perforated, and perforated gear in the winter, I guess it can work, but it's definitely not ideal. So I went and bought some waterproof RST gloves, and with all of this other gear that I've got on, by the time I get the gloves on, what you've got is you've got your sleeves, you know, my sports sleeves that are bunched up on my wrist. On top of those I've got my onesie, then I've got my jacket sleeves. The jacket sleeves then velcro tight, even more protection from wind getting up your arm. Then the gloves over the top of all of that, and the gloves themselves, obviously, they velcro up as well. Other than that, there are 1 or 2 things that you could do. I mentioned earlier electronically operated gear, so you could go with heated gloves, heated grips, etc. I haven't gone down that road at the moment, although I must admit I do really like the idea of getting me some heated grips. I just need to decide, do I get heated grips for Laren, or do I get heated grips for my beloved 125 here? Or do I try and stretch and get heated grips for both of them? And I do just want to say that if you are one of those bikers that puts their bike away for the winter, there's nothing wrong with that. I used to do exactly the same. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But if you do want to ride a bike through the winter, yes, it is possible. And with all the extra gear, admittedly, sometimes I can't get comfortable. Now, I always like my clothes to be comfortable, but I do manage to strike a balance between comfort and style, and I will compromise where necessary. But with all this extra bike gear, when I get on the bike, I almost immediately, I'll ride off, and I'm shuffling my ass because it don't feel right, and then my elbows don't feel right, and then my shoulders, and then my wrists, and then somehow I just seem to get comfortable. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I actually do manage to get comfortable, or whether my brain just accepts this is the way. But my point is, you have to be comfortable, so don't be afraid to send items back and get a different size if you need to.